sometimes we start believing that I'm doing well because the company I'm working in or the products I'm selling are good products, that's why I'm doing well. But it's nothing to do with the company or the products. It's always your relations with the people. So if you get along well with people on a people-to-people basis, you can sell anything to anyone. So it doesn't matter what brand, what quality, what company you're representing. So people are the key behind every business, as you mentioned, every industry, every business. It's people who make things happen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Sameer. Sameer, why don't you give us the too long didn't read about who you are and what got you here?
Right. I was brought up in India, in Delhi.
Yeah.
I did my engineering from Delhi, and then I worked in India for 3 years. Initially in manufacturing and then in air conditioning. And based on my air conditioning experience, I left India and went to Middle East to work in air conditioning field there. I was based in Muscat for a couple of years, and then I realized I don't want to remain engineer all my life. I need to study more. So that brought me to Australia for my MBA. I did my MBA from Sydney University, and while I was studying there, I met my wife. She's from Mexico. She was also there studying, doing her master's in law. So end of our studies, we decided to get married, and that was the time when both Australia and New Zealand were going through recession and jobs were a bit hard. So I ended up having a job in Fiji as an expat, which turned out to be a very good 3-year honeymoon for us.
Yeah.
Because we had just married and we moved to Fiji. And once we decided to have a family, that's what brought us to New Zealand. We thought we'll try another place, different place, and raise the kids. So now we have 2 beautiful kids, boy and a girl, both born here. We've been here in New Zealand for 30 years. And during this time, I have again worked in refrigeration industry. First as a CEO of a company for 20 years, where I grew that business to international business by taking our business to Australia, Thailand, India, many other markets. Eventually, that business got sold to a Swedish company, and that was about 7-8 years ago. Since then, I've been more of an investor, investing in a lot of different businesses, including a few startups. And I also in quite a few governance roles. I sit on a few boards. One of the main being I'm a current chair of Bank of India in New Zealand.
Oh yeah, cool. That's really cool. So your kind of trajectory in your career, it was kind of grounded in a understanding and an engineering kind of background. So very first principles driven, kind of understanding how it works.
Yeah.
But then you were like, oh, okay, I think that perhaps being more business aware would help you in your career. And then that CEO role probably solidified a lot of your growth and wealth over time? Or?
Certainly did, yeah. So when I came to New Zealand, I started sales manager job, but with my background and knowledge and experience I had previously, very quickly I had like 4 promotions in 4 years, and in the 4th year I was the CEO of the business. And obviously, and working as a CEO in a company and working on a profit share basis, yeah, that was a time when I started making a lot of wealth. But since I was totally committed to a business and growing that business internationally, I could only invest in passive investments. So hence ended up investing a lot into various properties, both residential and commercial.
Okay.
But since I have become a freelancer and doing my own thing, yeah, I've invested in all kind of assets now. So I'm quite big in stock market, which is probably not the best time at the moment to talk about, but I've invested in carbon units, gold, various funds, all sorts of things. Yeah.
So you've kind of spent quite a lot of time diversifying and getting access to other assets. That kind of interest is intellectual, you think, in terms of kind of having quite a broad set of asset exposure?
I think so, yeah. I think certainly gives you a bit of a, what's the right word, stability, because as we know, like, stocks are going down at the moment, but same time gold has gone up quite a bit. So yeah, and I do trade between. I'm also work-wise a bit of a trader.
Yeah.
The company I worked as a CEO was a trading company, wholesaling company.
Yeah, cool. So there's a lot of trading dynamics.
So I do currency trading, I do a bit of trading as well. So yeah, that gives me a variety of things to get involved with. And stability comes from the fact of this diversification. If one thing is going up, the other one is sort of balances out. Even in terms of property, first I started with the residential only, then we moved into commercial, but then I diversified by going into Australia. So bought property in Australia above. So yeah, just trying to.
Did you have shares in the company you were a CEO of?
No, I didn't have the shares, but my working arrangement was on a profit share basis.
Does that mean you did get upside from the acquisition, or it was just on that you did?
Yeah, during my time, that company got bought and sold 4 times.
Oh, really?
So ownership changed 4 times. So yeah, I always had the upside, both from the seller's point of view and the buyer's point of view. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. How many people was the organization? How many people was it when you started, and how many regions versus the last acquisition when you left?
oh yeah, when we started, we had about 4 outlets in New Zealand and 1 in Australia. So when I left, I think we had 20 outlets in New Zealand, maybe around 40 in Australia. We had a factory in Thailand. We had 6 sales offices in India.
Wow.
So in terms of staff, when I started, we were probably 15 people.
So it's a startup.
Yeah, so it was going on for a while, but yeah, and we were not very heavy on the number of people, I guess. So when I left, we had about 90 people in New Zealand, 110 in Australia, and another 100 between India and Thailand. About 300 people.
So did you have to travel a lot for that to kind of make it all work?
Yeah, the thing which little price you pay, I had to be away from the family literally 6 months of the year, every year for about 15 years while I was building up this international business. As a result of that, I tell people jokingly that I've probably seen more of Australia than many Australians have. We went to every nick and corner of Australia looking for opportunities to open an outlet or do a joint venture or buy a business.
Yeah. Did your business grow quite a lot, that business? Did it grow through acquisition?
Yes, we did buy a few companies, but we also started many companies from ground up, opened some new outlets in new locations. And also we did quite a few joint ventures where we were able to find a local partner who we thought will add a lot more value being a local in a certain remote part of Australia.
Yeah.
So we started some joint ventures from ground zero as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that was a very interesting experience of, working in different markets, different territories, different dynamics. And again, refrigeration, air conditioning being at a different life cycle in different markets.
Yeah.
So yeah, learned a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. And now you're more focused on governance roles?
Yeah, governance roles. And also I do a lot of mentoring for young people who are looking at starting and growing their businesses internationally, because that's what I've been there. I've done that. So besides mentoring, I do get involved in a lot of areas. I do judging of growth businesses for Auckland Chamber. Yeah, so that also gives me opportunity to meet and see many other businesses which are going through the same growth cycle and challenges which I have experienced myself. So yeah, that certainly keeps me busy and occupied these days.
I guess, what point did you know that you were super, obviously, to be doing everything you've been doing, you've got quite a hunger and passion for business? Was there a moment, or were you just naturally and always interested in business?
Yeah, I guess it would be probably natural. As I said, I started my life as a career as an engineer, but very quickly I could see around me that all the people who were 30, 40 years older than me were doing exactly what I was doing as a young engineer. So I couldn't really see a hell of a lot of challenge, continue doing that all my life.
Right.
So after doing MBA and getting exposed to many other areas of life, we had to study law, economics, finances, all those sort of things broadened my spectrum in life. And I would say MBA study was very helpful for me to start thinking on a bigger picture of business. So there's awareness, and that's been the catalyst for me to do the MBA and move into bigger and better things, and gave me a big jump in my career as well. From working as an engineer and slowly growing up the ranks as an engineer, I was straight away into the management roles.
Yeah, that's a good path to take. And then, it's probably a different pace from being a CEO, but you could be less active now, but it's obviously an intentional reason for you to keep going and keep learning and keep kind of exploring.
Yeah, and one of the things I will highlight to you is the networks, which are underrated. I mean, while doing what I've been doing and traveling, I've built some very good and strong relationships and networks around the world, and they help a lot. many times they keep me going, they keep me motivated. I get a lot of opportunities because of the contacts I have built. So yeah, that keeps me excited.
Would you get a good network from the MBA experience?
That we did.
That would have been a good start.
That was a good start. Even the place where I stayed in Sydney while doing MBA was a place called International House. I met people of 45 nationalities living there in the same hostel as me. That's how I met my Mexican wife. There were a lot of people, so I learned a lot about various countries, cultures, their economies, and what makes them tick. So that sort of exposure and of course at the study level, yeah, those things were pretty good. So those networks, friendships are still going in various parts of the world. And what happened since I started expanding or started the business in India, started expanding. That was the time I started connecting with Indian diaspora in New Zealand as well.
Right.
Until then, I hadn't, but about 15 years ago when I started looking at what other Indians are doing in this part of the world, and I joined India-New Zealand Business Council. That brought me in connection with many companies and people who were doing trade between New Zealand and India. And then I grew in that organization as a passion because I wanted India and New Zealand to come closer and do more with each other. So I ended up being the chairman of India-New Zealand Business Council, and I was involved in various trade negotiations and business delegations to India from New Zealand. So that's been another activity on the side besides business. There's no business in that, but just a passion to keep those things happening also been pretty good.
But I think, it'd be interesting to discuss a little bit about, you mentioned it, about the network side. And obviously we often think of businesses as these big things that are very difficult to penetrate. However, underneath those are individuals in the organization that are ultimately going to help you drive a deal over the line, or could be one of the reasons why the deal falls over or stops and loses momentum. Like, is there anything you learn about that kind of the interplay of like kind of individuals trying to have their own impact with their own incentives and then the company alongside that, and how you've been able to kind of, I guess, manage that and kind of get the most out of those relationships to get deals done? Because I think there's not a lot of, we kind of don't perhaps think of these, ultimately any organization, whether it be a government organization or a private entity, is just a bunch of people kind of trying to put things together. Were there any tactics or anything you learned around the personal side of getting deals done in these larger organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's something I tell all the young people, the people I'm mentoring as well, that sometimes we start believing that I'm doing well because the company I'm working in or the products I'm selling are good product. That's why I'm doing well. But it's nothing to do with the company or the products. It's always your relations with the people. So if you get along well with people on a people-to-people basis, you can sell anything to anyone. So it doesn't matter what brand, what quality, what company you are representing. So people are the key behind every business, as you mentioned, every industry, every business. It's people who make things happen. And I've been very conscious of that. And that's where I say having good relationships is very important and has been very fruitful to me in my case. And I've done a lot of business, as you probably heard, in Asia.
Yeah.
And in Asia, particularly, the relationships are even more important than they are in the Western world.
Okay.
So making good relations and then doing business on top of the relationship is the way to go, rather than trying to do a business and then form a relationship.
Yeah, so you kind of go build a relationship, understand motivations, get the trust,
Absolutely.
and then the transaction can come later.
Exactly.
Whereas I think early on, you're kind of more, not hungry, but you're kind of more anxious for a transaction, especially in the early days because you're getting started and you're not established. Whereas perhaps that can then become the barrier to...
Maybe you can do a one-off transaction like that, but that's only a short-term thing. But if you want to carry on doing business in the long run, then building that relationship and gaining each other's trust is key element, especially, as I said, in Asia, it's very, very important. You need to spend time building relationships.
So that's why you spent 6 months a year away from home.
You have to go and wine and dine with people. You have to play golf with people. You have to do, whatever social activities to get that bond, not only again one-on-one, but family to family as well in many cases. So those are very important things. Another thing, while we are on the subject, I'll mention to you, which I've learned over the years, which I'm quite good at, is delegation. That's again something I learned over the years when I saw some businesses, the owner or the key guy of the business becomes the bottleneck for the growth of the business himself or herself. So getting out of the way and let the business grow, and you can do that by delegating. Of course, you need to have give authority along with the delegating. But yeah, if you can do that, that's the only way you can grow business into bigger business, international business. But if you are a sort of control freak and want everything to control yourself and want every decision to go through you,
And then you become
the bigger
blatant troll as well, right?
or your own growth. Yeah. So learning the art of delegation earlier in your career is key. And more.
Was there anything that was there any like books or any resources that you used to do that, or you just practiced it? You were just like, I'm uncomfortable with this, but I'm just going to let it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, I think as I said, with the experience, so I've been in a couple of companies where I saw.
Right. So you saw the problem somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw the problem that every small decision had to go through one person. And for me, it was like, people been doing the same job for 15, 20 years. Why can't they just take the decision themselves? Why they still have to run it past the owner of the business? So the moment I got the chance, I immediately told, all these people, you just carry on. You know what you're doing. You've been doing it for long enough.
Yeah.
So I don't need to, worry about it. But if you have any problem, you get stuck something, somewhere, something new for you, then you come to me. But otherwise, routine work, get on with it and you do it. I don't need to check everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So that gives them a bit more confidence as well. And yeah, that's how I manage so many things even now when I said, got a number of businesses I've invested in, a number of governance roles I do. A lot of networking and social events I get involved with. Yeah, it's only possible if you start managing your time and delegating a few things.
And you would have done that early in the CEO role, 15 to over 100 employees.
Absolutely, yeah. So when I was in charge of obviously the business in New Zealand, when we had mostly New Zealand business, but when we started expanding into every country, then I had to appoint a country manager for every country, and then only those country managers were reporting to me, and then they had the authority to look after their local teams in their country.
How did you incentivize them? Was it profit share typically with those country managers, or?
Profit share to a degree, but I think what was the most important factor was the culture. Although we grew from a small company to a reasonable size company, we always maintained kind of a family culture. Everybody was open, transparent. I never let any politics creep into our business culture. So no backstabbing going on, things like that. So yeah, just open, transparent. Everybody just get on with their work. And yeah, if they done well, gets appreciated. And so yeah, just having that culture was the key, I guess, where everybody enjoyed. And we were able to attract good people from our competitors, those who all wanted to come and work for us,
right,
because of that culture we had.
Nice.
So that is a key, I would say. Create a good culture, give people independence, authority, and of course, and you delegate a certain load off your back to them.
What do you think you've kind of got a great lens in terms of seeing what's got, obviously actually having quite a lot of experience in seeing Asia grow over the last kind of 20 years, let's say. Plus you have a very, very strong tie to India still. What do you find the biggest barriers are in New Zealand in terms of finding real productivity growth and prosperity, given that, we're a relatively unproductive country and we don't have the upside of, human scale in terms of kind of market size. So we kind of have to fight a very unique battle. And we have some real kind of inherent challenges, especially now as you kind of are seeing a bit of a demographic shift and issue around kind of owning property, but also just small businesses. And there's this kind of tension, and how do we go and find productivity in a very kind of relatively small market that you kind of have to find good export opportunities, really?
Yeah, no, you're very right. This actually has been my observation as well. And I've been talking a lot about it because we as a country, since I've seen it last 30 years, we've been going backwards in many ways, especially when it comes to productivity. In terms of infrastructure, we're going backwards, whereas most countries around the world have progressed so much. We are probably one of the only better cities in the world who don't have any direct connection between city and airport, for example. I think we have a long way to go in building infrastructure in this country, which will help us increase our productivity. So that is the key. And I think some of that comes down to leadership. The countries, if I look around the world, who have done well over the years is countries like Singapore, China, and now India last few years. It all comes down to having a very strong leadership. And these are the leaders who can see beyond 5 years, 10 years, have a vision of their country for next 30, 40 years. Because to build things like infrastructure, you need to have that long-term vision. Otherwise, if you worry about your every 3-year elections, then you can't get anything done.
Well, do you think that then not Western democracy as an entirety, but the way that the cycles are working, especially in New Zealand with 3 years versus 4, that's an extra year difference that plays a role. But even you could argue that 4 years is not long enough to get, real things done. Is it then a cultural problem within actual political parties because they often can't be coherent enough to win 3 elections in a row and actually get a job done?
Yeah, that certainly is one of the issues, but I mean, there are ways around that. I guess something like what India did a while back was they set up a independent body called Planning Commission.
Okay.
So the role of this commission is to plan ahead next 30, 40 years in terms of infrastructure and other things for the country. And all the parties have accepted that, and keep it independent of who is in power and who's not.
Right.
So let them carry on doing what they're doing.
And that's infrastructure focused or just future gazing in general?
It does the overall plan for the country.
So that would include like financing and the kind of technology, infrastructure, education. It's actually kind of all encompassing, relatively holistic.
Yes, yeah. And the key there is they have a fair bit of independence in doing what they're doing for the country rather than getting involved in, party by party and politics and, one step ahead and 2 step backward sort of situation. So we can still have that in New Zealand, but certainly moving to 4-year or 5-year term will certainly be very helpful as well. So I think that is one of the key things we need to do. And also other thing I have seen over the years, probably lack of identity to a degree. I mean, until 20 years ago, we were doing so much business with UK and Europe, and we literally used to think we are part of Europe here until UK dropped us one day and said, you are on your own, we're joining the European Union. And that's all of a sudden New Zealand said, oh my God, we think we are part of Asia. We are surrounded by all of Asia here. We are no longer part of Europe. So
Right.
So that completely changed the identity of New Zealand, and came down to building relationships with all the neighbors, all the Asian countries, which we had ignored previously. So that hasn't worked out very well with, changing that. But yeah, I think we are on the right track now, but we lost a number of years in the process.
Do you think it ultimately is on business owners to work out ways to be more productive and be more export focused in a way that's kind of scalable? Like Singapore's like obviously something that we could look to because it's a small body of land, small population.
Yeah, great example. Even I just been having some discussions earlier with some European leaders, and even they're talking about Czech Republic.
Okay.
90% of their economy, and even Hungary for that matter, 80-90% of their economy is all export oriented, and they are lucky because they're being part of Europe. Mostly they export within European Union. But yeah, we can do a lot better job what we do here as well. I mean, we haven't been, since we are a small market of only 5 million people, only way we can survive is by exporting lots of goods. One other area for us to get richer would be to explore our natural resources, which Northern Europe has done very well, Australia is doing, but for some reason we applied brakes and stopped utilizing our natural resources. So that's another area if we can work on. And
do you have any rare minerals here?
Yeah. Just one Canadian company just agreed on $100 million investment to explore Wahi gold mine. That just work is starting. We have some of the best coal mines in this country. India used to import our coal and Australian coal, and they always used to tell me that New Zealand coal quality is much better than the Australian coal. But since we had one accident, we stopped a lot of coal mining here. So we do have resources, and of course we have under the oceans as well, gas and oil and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, we have some political reasons so we don't do that. But yeah, there are opportunities.
That's those are kind of exporting atoms. And then also the potential of exporting bits if we can. Stuff like zero. other kind of technology that's able to permeate its way into the overseas market, which is actually very difficult for a company in New Zealand often because of a bit of a lack of capital, or, lack of being able to get to be close to those markets, even though from a time zone perspective, quite good actually. If you look at the West Coast, we can easily work with the West Coast. We can, to a degree, work with India. We could work with Southeast Asia quite nicely. And obviously Australia is a big market. Often I think that New Zealand tech companies expand too slowly. If I look at Sharesies as an example of a company that dominated here, has most of the market share really of online low-cost broking, of, I guess, predominantly the smaller accounts. Then when they moved to Australia, they were very well established here. They were seen as a New Zealand company, which sometimes works against you in Australia.
That's right, yeah.
But they don't like that.
No, they don't. Having worked in both the countries quite extensively, yeah, I can say that for sure. So when we started expanding and growing in Australia, we had to pretend as if we are Australian companies. Yeah, we had to set up our own Australian company.
And you don't talk about the fact that you're in New Zealand.
No, that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. Because that's something we've thought about with our business, because, I guess our niche is business owners and high earning professionals at companies that are typically maybe at public companies, and they earn shares, and then we make it easy for them to transact in those shares and build up their retirement. Obviously, Australia is at least 10 times larger, and we're thinking about that all the time. And Australia is the second most self-directed market in the world, behind the US, in terms of self-directed ownership of assets like equities. So it's a very interesting market for us. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're exploring going there earlier than you might traditionally, because we don't want to get tarred with the brush of being a New Zealand company.
Much as companies, it also goes for people as well. I remember meeting so many top management people in Australian businesses, and deeper you get into the discussion, you find out most of them are Kiwis, but they don't talk about it openly. They keep it hidden until they really have to, but they pretend they're local Aussies or whatever. Yeah.
Do you think that in a move like that, because you kind of did it when you were here, you were heavy New Zealand, but your growth in Australia was obviously the largest growth area, at least in this part of the world, for sure, like massively, right? You go from basically nothing to 40 versus, the 15 you had here to 20. Did you get someone on the ground there that was well established in the business community? Like, is it a strong hire that can help you there? Like an individual that could be that kind of keystone for you in market?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, not only at the top management level, but even at the ground level as well. I mean, as I said, we had a lot of trade outlets, and we mostly used to have local people in the front end of the business. So when customers walk in, they're dealing with a local rather than a Kiwi or an Indian or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, that is very important. That's key as well. So yeah, people who are taking the decisions, they are in the background. That's all right. But people in the front most definitely need to be people customers can relate with.
Yes. Interesting. So in terms of the next 5 years, like, what would be some kind of things that you would like to achieve? Have you got a plan in mind, or?
Yeah, well, as I said, on the passion side of things, I'm very keen for India and New Zealand to do more trade. So I just come back from India 3 weeks ago. We were there as part of business delegation with Prime Minister. Very successful trip. We saw many signs and signals that this time we actually are going to do something, and starting to do something already. So yeah, next 5 years, I want to see trade between India and New Zealand grow maybe as much it has grown between China and New Zealand, hopefully. On my personal front, yeah, as I mentioned, I'm an investor, so I've got few investments in businesses, and which I'll continue to keep doing more of it. Yeah, and probably a few more governance roles as well. At the moment, I'm on a few medium-sized businesses, but I would like to be on some boards of bigger companies as well. So yeah, there's a bit of a growth left in there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. And then I guess, for someone that took a path that was relatively, I wouldn't say corporate, but like, you joined a business, you ran that business, but you didn't necessarily own it. But you've done an extremely good job of accumulating and building your wealth over time. What were some of the habits that you basically engendered that basically enabled that?
I guess some of the habits are in my blood, I guess. Being an Indian and having grown up in India, we always firm believers in savings. Even if we earn $1 $1, we still save 30 cents out of a dollar. So yeah, that's been ingrained in me from childhood. So while I was earning good income as a CEO and on profit share, I kept saving fair amount of money. And on top of that, not only saving, but investing, kept investing that money, which obviously has grown. And especially in a place like New Zealand, some properties I bought 15 years ago, they are 3-4 times the value today. So property has been a good investment. Yeah, so saving would be one habit. And again, not being flamboyant or flashy, or that's one thing I like about New Zealand culture. Is just simple living, stay humble, no need to show off. So yeah, in that regard, we don't spend much. So yeah, so savings keep growing rapidly because you're not spending anything. So yeah, that.
Were there any negotiations or key moments where you made sure your comp package was strong?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, negotiation goes hand in hand with everyday life. Again, coming from India and having grown in India, we have to be very good and very tough negotiators, because every step of the way in life in India, you have to negotiate, whether you're buying vegetables or you're buying a car or you're buying a house. So yeah, we grow up with that. So yeah, and that's very helpful and very handy in business world as well. So
totally.
Yeah, every time you're doing a deal, whether it's a $1 deal or $1 million deal, yeah, negotiation skills come very handy.
That's it.
Very handy. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. I've learned a lot and I appreciate hearing your story. It's really cool.
Pleasure. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you, Chaplain.